I made my way through the palace halls. Guards snapped to attention and bowed their heads as I passed. Not bad for a dwarf who had been born as Castellus. I made my way through the halls till I came to Prince Trian's quarters. He had been here for some time now, awaiting the birth of his firstborn child. Earlier in the day, he had asked to speak with me. Typically, I would be spending my evening in the study with Merida, talking about the events of the day and enjoying some time to ourselves. But when Trian asked to speak with me, I had thought that he wanted to discuss something important, so I let Merida know I would be going to the palace. I stopped at the door to Trian's room and looked at the guard. Inform Prince Trian that Faren Oradum is here to speak with him as he requested. The guard bowed his head. Of course, my lord. I wasn't a lord. I was only technically a noble by being given the name Oradum and brought into Merida's house when she had formed it. However, that was enough to elevate me above the warrior caste. The admiration I received from most warriors in Orzammar was because I had been trained by Oghren, Tirn Logain, and King Marek. I had fought in every battle to retake the Thigh, and fought in the Battle of Ostagar against the Archdemon. When I was called Lord, it was usually out of respect for my combat prowess and my close association with Merida. The guard announced my arrival, then allowed me to enter. Train's rooms were spacious and open, covered in intricate carvings, animal skin rugs, and geodes which caught the torchlight and sent it dancing across the walls and ceiling. Trian was nearly at the door as I entered. He smiled and took my hand to give it a firm shake. Thank you for coming, Faren. I shook his hand and bowed my head. Of course, my prince. I am happy to serve. Stop bowing, Trian said as he pat my shoulder. You're my sister's betrothed and we've known each other since you were a child. You're family at this point. We're beyond bowing and titles. I stared at him for a moment. The upcoming child had definitely altered his priorities as far as family and friends were concerned. As you say, what was it you wanted to speak to me about? Come, Trian said as he led me to a set of chairs surround a small table where ale and food had been placed. He sat down and motioned to the chairs. Sit. I wanted to discuss something with you. I need your insight. That was a surprising admission. I took a seat across from him and grabbed a flagon to pour myself a mug of ale. I'm not sure what I could provide any insight to you on. You have a great deal more experience than I do. Trian nodded. In most things that is true, but not in this. He held a mug out and waited for me to fill it before he took a long draught from it. I need your insight on Merida. I trust that you recall that I stepped aside from consideration during the campaign to take back Iduken Taig. I sighed and sipped my ale. Aye. It was probably the worst news she'd been given up to that point. It's probably still some of the worst news she's ever received. Why do you think that is? He asked, looking at me curiously. Merida has never wanted to rule, I explained carefully. She's wanted to effect change for our people that would elevate our society and allow it to prosper. But her highest aspirations were to be your most trusted advisor while you were king. Trian hummed in thought, the sound similar to boulders shifting. I had considered that at one time as well. It's why I dedicated myself to ensuring she received the best education. However, after the measure to create the surface caste passed and her influence rose, I understood that I would never be king. It was a hard thing to accept for some time. She was a child, yet she commanded so much more admiration and love from our people that I could never hope to achieve. Still, for some time, I believed that these weren't the only things that mattered in a leader. The ability to coordinate and command troops, to lead them on the battlefield, was also a key factor in ruling. I sipped my ale. The battles on the way to Iduken Taig? Trian nodded. Just so. I was in command of our forces, but after I gave my orders, they all looked to see what Merida would do. She was never supposed to even see combat up close, but she charged right in with her Bronto riders. She slew a darkspawn in single combat at the age of 11, and her tactical placement of forces ensured that the entire army was safe during the trip. He sighed and tapped his fingers against his mug. She proved her ability to coordinate troops before we ever got to Iduken Taig. That's when I knew I would never be king. Her actions in the deep roads cemented that in my mind. I accepted it, so I told her. And do you know what she did? What's that? I asked, genuinely curious. She curled up in my arms and fell asleep. He chuckled. I knew that wasn't what she had wanted to hear. Even then I knew. But I'm not a man to ignore the facts when they're staring me in the face. I had even brought most of my belongings and a contingent of dwarves to begin repairing and populating the thigh in case I wanted to make that decision. We noticed that after the fact, I replied. I sat back and considered Trian for a few moments. What does this have to do with my insight on Merida? Merida doesn't want to be queen, Trian said, as if that was enough of an explanation. And you wish to offer her the chance to escape that fate? I asked, guessing at his point. Trian shook his head. No longer. Perhaps if the offer had been made after we retook Iduk and Tig, I would have agreed to give her what she desired. I wouldn't have liked it even then, but she would have earned it. But no, not anymore. She's gone well beyond what anyone could have expected any dwarf to do, even dwarves of legend. She's expanded our territory again, pushed back the darkspawn. There's no one in the assembly that would choose anyone over her. There was someone murdered when they voted against her. What do you think they'd do to anyone who voted against her becoming our next ruler? I nodded and considered his statement. If you're not speaking about a way to prevent her from becoming queen, what did you want to talk about? I've been speaking with members of the assembly, Trian replied. There is a growing consensus that Merida should not be queen. I squinted, trying to figure out where this was leading. I thought you said, they don't believe she should be queen, Trian interrupted me, because they want her to become empress of the dwarven empire. My eyes widened. Empress? Dwarven empire? Trained nodded. Merida has reclaimed several lost thags. She's brought prosperity unlike anything we've enjoyed before with the surface caste, and is a hero both in battle and in the hearts of our people. She's not ruling over a kingdom anymore. She's building an empire. The assembly sees this, and the Deshers I've spoken with are in agreement that this is the direction our people should head in. I shook my head and set my mug aside. Do you know what this will do to her? It's not just a change of title, it's an exponential change of expectations. They won't expect her to simply sit and rule. They'll expect her to not only continue expanding the empire, but to do it more successfully and faster than she's done so far. This will crush her. Trian set his mug down and leaned forward, his expression one of composed grief. I understand that. Trust me, I do. I know that she's done all that she's done because she was able to lead the efforts personally, and that those expeditions were what she truly loved. This is a sentence on her freedom. She'll rarely get to step foot outside of the city after being crowned. But she's the one person we can trust to coordinate these efforts. She may hate the crown, but she has the passion to see the expansion through. What good will that passion do her if she can't be a part of the effort? I asked. Those expeditions were only possible because she was there. Not just because of her magic, but because she was a unifying force that the people rallied around. They fought more fiercely and put in more effort simply because she was there. Do you truly believe the expansion will go as successfully without her leading it in person? I believe our people will come together to do whatever she desires because of their love for her, he responded. They will not blame her for a slower expansion. They will work diligently so that they don't let her down. I stopped myself from responding immediately. I took in a long, deep breath. After exhaling, I looked at Trian with a serious expression. If you want my insight, I'll tell you this here and now. She will not allow herself to be kept in the city. If the assembly insists that she stay in Orzammar while our forces march to retake Old Thags, she will use her influence with the people to make such a decision unpopular, or she'll disband the assembly. Trian considered the shocking suggestion that Merida might disband the assembly. You think she'd go that far? Merida has never wanted power, I explained carefully. Power has slowly been given to her, either through the assembly or through the people who love her. But every time she's been given more people, she has used it to its full extent. If you name her empress, then she will quickly realize that an empress does not bow to any other authority. She may keep the assembly around for show, but she will wield that power to its fullest extent. Anyone who tries to rebuke her will be ignored at best, and swept aside at worst. Trian sat back and thought over what I had just said. You think she will become a despot? I shook my head. Never. Everything she has ever done has been for the sake of our people. Her plans for the future are for the sake of our people, and anything she would choose to do as an empress would be for the good of our people. But if silencing deshers who make her an empress then believe they can still command her, she'll see as counterintuitive and a danger to her ability to rule properly. Then what do you suggest? Trian asked. The movement is already gaining a great deal of traction. If you're going to name her empress, then I would recommend having the assembly accept the role as a counseling body who would discuss matters she puts to them and come to her with recommendations, I replied. I would also suggest that no matter her decision in a matter, even if the decision flies in the face of the assembly should support her decisions publicly and discuss them with her in private. She will have no need for counselors who won't at least support her when the people ask questions. Trian seemed to be considering the response. The assembly will not like that. The assembly will still function the same way, I countered. The assembly already counsels the king, and the king can still veto the decisions of the assembly if he believes the assembly's decisions are in the best interest of our people. But if you name Merida empress, the assembly will have to accept the fact that they are giving up all of their power to Merida, and are accepting their role as a group of counselors. A fine point, Trian mused. One I will pass on to the deshers. But there was also something else I wanted to speak to you about. Oh? I asked. If the initial conversation had been as substantial as Merida becoming an empress, I could scarcely imagine what the next topic would be. I think we should begin planning your wedding, he smiled. By the stone. I was in for a long night.